We all know the story of Jenny and Sumit, a story of love against all odds, a story of cultural clashes, and a story built on one gigantic, earth-shattering lie: Sumit's secret arranged marriage. Jenny forgave him for that. She moved her entire life to India for him. She endured the wrath of his family and the judgment of the entire world, all in the name of love. But what if that wasn't his only secret? What if the lie that nearly destroyed them years ago was just the tip of the iceberg, a prelude to a deception so profound, so devastating, that it makes the first one look like a harmless fib? An exclusive insider source, someone very close to Sumit's first wife, has come forward with a bombshell revelation that will not just rock Jenny and Sumit's world, but shatter it into a million irreparable pieces. The lie Jenny never knew about has a name, and he's 8 years old. This is a story that will change everything you thought you knew about this couple. The details we have uncovered are shocking and frankly heartbreaking. If you want to be the first to hear about these explosive insider reports, you need to subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this unraveling story. Like this video to help us get this incredible information out to more people. The story begins, according to our insider reports, in October of 2025. On the surface, things for Jenny and Sumit had finally, after more than a decade of turmoil, settled into a semblance of normalcy. His parents, Anil and Sana, after years of viciously opposing the union, had finally softened. Reports from earlier this year even suggested that his mother, Sana, the same woman who once threatened suicide to prevent their marriage, was now friendly with Jenny, and that the couple was even living with Sumit's parents due to their own financial struggles. Sumit had lost his job, and Jenny's retirement funds were reportedly running low, forcing them into a situation that was once unthinkable: a shared family home. For viewers, it seemed like the final chapter of their drama was about peaceful, if strained, coexistence. But behind this fragile peace, a storm was brewing, a secret so dark it was poisoning everything from the inside out. Our sources describe Sumit's behavior during this period as a complete regression to the man Jenny first met, the man who was living a double life. The old patterns, the ones Jenny thought were long buried, began to resurface with alarming frequency. He became increasingly secretive, his phone a constant companion that he guarded with his life. He would take hushed, frantic calls at all hours of the night, stepping outside into the humid Indian air, his voice a low, angry murmur that Jenny could just barely hear through the window. When she would ask who it was, he would brush it off with a wave of his hand. "Just business," he'd say, or "a friend with problems." But the tone was wrong. It was laced with a panic that Jenny hadn't heard in years. Then came the mysterious trips. At least 2 or 3 times a month, Sumit would announce he had to leave for a day or two. The excuses were always vague, always related to family obligations. He claimed an aunt was sick in a neighboring state, or a cousin needed help with a business matter in Delhi. He'd pack a small bag, refuse to give any concrete details, and leave Jenny in the house with his parents, who would offer no explanation, their faces unreadable masks of complicity. Jenny, bless her heart, tried to believe him. She'd spent so long fighting for this life, for this man, that the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. She told herself it was just the usual family drama, the endless web of obligations that came with being part of a traditional Indian family. She knew his parents had only accepted her begrudgingly, and perhaps this was just the ongoing price of their truce. But a seed of doubt had been planted. There was a new level of desperation in Sumit's eyes, a haunted look that spoke of a pressure far beyond appeasing his parents. He was losing weight, his usual easy smile replaced by a permanent, stressed-out frown. The money issues were also escalating. Jenny noticed small, then larger discrepancies in their joint bank account. When she confronted him, he would become defensive, angry even. He'd create elaborate stories about unexpected expenses, repairs for the family home, or loans to relatives that he promised would be paid back. He was gaslighting her, making her feel like she was crazy for questioning him, for not trusting him after everything they had been through. The irony was suffocating. He was using the very foundation of their reconciliation, trust, as a shield to hide his new betrayal. The tension in the house was palpable. Sana and Anil, who had once been so openly hostile, were now watching her with a strange mixture of pity and contempt. Their conversations would stop the moment she entered a room. They exchanged loaded glances with Sumit, silent communications that Jenny was deliberately excluded from. She was a guest in her own life, an outsider in the family she had fought so hard to join. She was lonely, isolated, and a deep, cold fear began to creep into her heart. The past wasn't just haunting them, it was actively repeating itself, and Jenny was once again the last to know. The breaking point, the first crack in the carefully constructed wall of lies, came on a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in a place Jenny considered her sanctuary, the local market. This wasn't one of the big touristy bazaars, but a smaller neighborhood market where the vendors knew her by name, a place where she felt a sense of belonging. She was haggling over the price of mangoes, the familiar chaos of the market a comforting buzz around her. That's when she was approached by a woman she had never seen before. The woman was impeccably dressed, modern, and carried an air of confidence that stood out. She introduced herself with a warm smile, claiming to be a distant cousin of Sumit's ex-wife. The name of the ex-wife, a ghost from their past, was jarring enough, but the woman's demeanor was disarmingly friendly. She asked Jenny about her life in India, how she was adjusting, and even complimented her on how happy Sumit looked. For a few moments, Jenny was fooled. She thought perhaps this was an olive branch, a sign that the old wounds were finally healing, that the extended family was learning to accept her. She engaged in polite conversation, sharing small anecdotes about their life. The woman listened intently, nodding and smiling. But then the woman's expression shifted. The warmth vanished, replaced by something cold and serious. The friendly mask dropped, and her eyes held a look of pity that made Jenny's stomach clench. "It's good to see him so settled," the woman said, her voice dripping with insinuation. "He has so many responsibilities after all." Before Jenny could process the strange turn in conversation, the woman took out her phone. "My nephew just had his birthday," she said, her voice now pointed and deliberate. "Sumit is such a good father, so devoted." She tilted the screen towards Jenny. The picture was bright and cheerful, a typical child's birthday party. There were balloons, a large cake, and a group of people smiling for the camera. And right in the center, next to a small boy blowing out candles, was Sumit. He wasn't just in the picture. He was beaming, his arm wrapped protectively around the child's shoulders. The boy, who looked to be about 7 or 8 years old, was the spitting image of a young Sumit. It was in the shape of his eyes, the curve of his smile, the set of his jaw. The resemblance was undeniable, bone deep. Jenny's world tilted on its axis. The sounds of the market faded into a dull roar in her ears. She stared at the photo, her mind struggling to comprehend what her eyes were seeing. Sumit, her Sumit, at a child's birthday party, looking every bit the proud, loving father. The woman didn't need to say anything else. Her message had been delivered with surgical precision. She watched Jenny's face crumble, a flicker of something that looked like satisfaction in her eyes. "Your husband is a good father," she repeated, the words now a cruel, deliberate twist of the knife. Then, as quickly as she had appeared, she turned and melted back into the market crowd, leaving Jenny standing alone amidst the vibrant colors and smells of the bazaar, her heart pounding with the cold, sickening rhythm of betrayal. The mangoes she was holding slipped from her grasp, falling to the dusty ground with a soft thud. Jenny returned home in a daze. The image from the phone burned into her memory. The confrontation that followed was the stuff of nightmares, a scene of raw, unfiltered agony that ripped open every old wound and inflicted countless new ones. She found Sumit in the living room, casually watching television. The sheer normalcy of the scene, contrasted with the chaos raging inside her, sent a surge of fury through her. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, not at first. Her voice was eerily calm when she spoke. "I was at the market today," she said, her words hanging in the tense air. Sumit looked up, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes at her tone. "I met a woman, a cousin of your ex-wife." The color drained from Sumit's face. He knew instantly that the game was up. The carefully constructed world he had built on lies was about to come crashing down. Jenny held out her phone, showing him not the picture itself, but a description she had typed with trembling fingers. Every detail of the photograph seared into her mind. "She showed me a picture, Sumit. A birthday party, with a little boy. A boy who looks just like you." Sumit stared at the phone, then at Jenny's face, his expression a mask of pure horror and desperation. He started to stammer, the usual excuses and denials dying on his lips. He tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, a relative's child, but the words were hollow, and they both knew it. Jenny's calm finally shattered. "Don't you dare lie to me again," she screamed, her voice breaking with a decade's worth of pain and forgiveness that now felt like a fool's investment. "Who is that boy, Sumit? Tell me the truth. For once in your life, tell me the truth." And then, under the weight of her fury and his own guilt, he broke. The confession came out in a torrent of sobs and self-loathing. Yes, the boy was his His son, he was 8 years old. His name was Rohan. The truth was far worse than Jenny could have ever imagined. This wasn't a recent development. The boy was born shortly after Sumit and his first wife were married, before Jenny had even moved to India for the first time. He had known about his son for his entire life, for their entire relationship, through all the lies about the marriage, through the divorce, through their own wedding. This colossal secret had been there, lurking in the shadows. He claimed his parents had forced him to keep it a secret. It was a condition of his divorce from his first wife. His parents, Anil and Sahna, had brokered the entire deal. They promised to pay the costly divorce settlement and support the child, but only if Sumit swore to never tell Jenny. Their reasoning was cruel and calculating. They believed that if Jenny knew about the child, she would leave, and Sumit would eventually return to his proper family. The child was their insurance policy, their hidden ace. When Jenny didn't leave, when she and Sumit actually got married, his parents changed their tactics. The secret child became a tool of blackmail. They began demanding more from Sumit. They wanted him to be a more active father, to be present for birthdays, for school events, to build a relationship with the son he had barely known. But their motives were not born of a sudden surge of grandfatherly affection. They saw the boy as Sumit's bloodline, the continuation of their family, a connection to a life they still believed he should be living. They wanted to use the child to pull him back into their orbit, to slowly, piece by piece, tear him away from Jenny. And then came the final, brutal confession. The unexplained trips, the mysterious phone calls, it was all for his son. But the money he had been siphoning from their joint account wasn't just for gifts and child support. His parents had been manufacturing financial crises, demanding large sums of money from him for the boy's upbringing and future. It was a deliberate, malicious scheme to financially cripple him and Jenny, to create stress and discord, to make their life together untenable. The money he was stealing from his wife was being used by his parents as a weapon to destroy their marriage. Every lie he had ever told was dwarfed by this one. It was a deception of such magnitude that it retroactively poisoned every memory, every shared moment, every promise he had ever made. Jenny wasn't just his wife. She was the unwitting financier of his secret life, the dupe in a long con orchestrated by the very family she had tried so desperately to win over. The foundation of their marriage wasn't just cracked, it was a gaping black hole of deceit. Just when it seemed the betrayal couldn't possibly cut any deeper, the story erupted from the realm of private heartbreak into a full-blown public spectacle. The ex-wife's cousin, the same woman who had approached Jenny in the market, was not just a messenger of personal doom. She was the catalyst for a public humiliation campaign. She reached out to a popular 90-day Fiancé blogger, one known for their scathing commentary and dedicated following. This wasn't going to be a simple rumor or a bit of gossip. This was a calculated strike, armed with irrefutable proof. The woman, whose identity our insider reports have protected but described as a close and loyal confidant of the ex-wife, provided the blogger with a treasure trove of evidence. First, there were the photos. Not just the one she showed Jenny, but dozens more. Sumit at the hospital, presumably for the child's birth. Sumit at religious ceremonies for the boy. Sumit on holidays, at parks, pushing the child on a swing. The photos spanned years, meticulously documenting a secret fatherhood, painting a picture of a double life so complete it was breathtaking in its audacity. They were a visual timeline of his deception, but photos can be explained away. Context can be twisted. The cousin knew this. She had brought a smoking gun, a piece of evidence so absolute it would obliterate any denial Sumit could possibly conjure. She provided the blogger with a high-resolution scanned copy of the child's official birth certificate, issued by the Indian government. On the line for the father's name, clear as day, was the name Sumit Singh. His date of birth was listed, matching perfectly. There was no ambiguity, no room for doubt. It was a legal document, a government record of his paternity, and by extension, his monumental lie. As if that wasn't enough to demolish their lives, she provided one final chilling piece of evidence. It was an audio recording of a recent explosive argument between Sumit and his father, Anil. The recording was crystal clear, likely captured covertly on a smartphone. Anil's voice is sharp, domineering, and filled with menace. Sumit is pleading, desperate. The conversation is entirely in Hindi, but the blogger quickly had it translated and transcribed. The contents were sickening. Anil can be heard berating Sumit for neglecting his duties. He isn't talking about Jenny, he's talking about the boy. "You think you can just play house with that old woman and forget your own blood?" Anil shouts in the recording. "This boy is a Singh. He carries our name. You will provide for him. You will be a father to him. Sumit's voice is barely a whisper. I am trying. I will give you the money. I visit when I can, but Jenny is suspicious. She is asking questions. Anil's response is the final devastating blow, the clear and undeniable proof of the blackmail. I don't care about your American witch, he snarls. You will do your duty to your son and our bloodline, or we will send her back to her country with nothing. We will show her the proof ourselves. We will ruin you both. The boy is our power over you. Do you understand? You will choose your real family, or you will lose everything. The threat was explicit. The child was not a secret to be protected, but a weapon to be wielded. Sumit was trapped, not by his love for two women, but by the cruel manipulations of his own parents. They were using their own grandchild as leverage to enforce their will, to destroy a marriage they had never approved of, and to reclaim their son through the most vicious form of emotional and financial blackmail imaginable. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The moment the blogger posted the story, complete with the birth certificate and the translated audio transcript, the 90-day Fiancé universe exploded. The news went viral within minutes, spreading across social media platforms like a wildfire. It was the lead story on every reality TV news outlet, the subject of thousands of posts, comments, and videos. The insider report had become an undeniable public fact. For Jenny, the private nightmare of Sumit's confession had now become a worldwide spectacle of her humiliation. She was trapped in the home of her tormentors, with a husband whose entire life was a lie. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, messages from friends, family, and even strangers, all reacting to the news. The internet, which had once been a place where she found comfort and support from fans, was now a source of immense pain. The comment sections were a brutal mix of pity and scorn. Some felt deeply for her, expressing outrage at Sumit and his family, but many others were cruel, mocking her for being so naive, for falling for his lies not once, but twice. She was a meme, a punchline, a cautionary tale about a gullible older woman. The public nature of the exposure made it impossible to even begin to process the betrayal. There was no quiet space to grieve the death of her marriage. It was being dissected in real time by a global audience. The lie was simply too profound to overcome. This wasn't just about Sumit having a child, it was about the years of calculated deception. It was the realization that their entire relationship, which she believed was a hard-won victory over lies and adversity, was in fact built upon an even bigger, more fundamental lie. The fresh start they were supposed to have after his divorce was a sham. Every I love you, every promise for the future was now tainted by the knowledge that he was simultaneously living a complete double life. A life that included a son he had never mentioned. It was the ultimate gaslighting. He had allowed her to fight his parents for years, to believe she was the sole obstacle to their happiness, all while knowing he was complicit in a secret that was infinitely more significant. He hadn't just lied to her, he had allowed her to structure her entire existence around a false reality. The trust wasn't just broken, it was annihilated. There was nothing left to rebuild. How could she ever look at him again without seeing the face of a stranger? How could she live in that house, breathing the same air as the people who had orchestrated this entire nightmare, who had used their own grandchild as a tool to psychologically torture her? There was only one possible outcome, one path left for her to take. The final image we have from this story is as heartbreaking as it is inevitable. It's not a dramatic confrontation or a tearful goodbye. It's a grainy, leaked photograph, likely snapped by a fellow traveler on their phone. The photo shows Jenny at Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi. She is alone, pulling a single suitcase. Her face is pale and drawn, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. She looks small and defeated, a solitary figure in the bustling terminal. There is no Sumit by her side to see her off, no final embrace, just a woman, stripped of her marriage, her home, and her dignity, heading back to America to a life she had left behind a decade ago. The dream was over, shattered by a secret that had a name and a face that looked just like the man she thought she knew. Jenny's lonely flight back to America was not the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning of the reckoning. While that grainy airport photo signaled the death of a marriage, the complex web of conspiracy, blackmail, and family warfare that led to that moment was only just beginning to be understood. The viral explosion of the birth certificate and the damning audio recording was the public execution. But what happened next? in the suffocating silence of the Singh family home and in the quiet desolation of Jenny's return to America, is where the true depths of this tragedy are revealed. Our insider sources, who have been working tirelessly to piece together the aftermath, have painted a picture so grim, so calculated, that it will forever change the way you see every player in this devastating saga. Let's start in India, in the immediate aftermath of Jenny's departure. Our sources describe the scene at the Singh house not as one of celebration, but of cold, quiet victory. There was no party, no joyous reunion. Instead, Anil and Sahna simply resumed their lives as if a temporary inconvenience had finally been removed. Their goal was never just to get rid of Jenny, it was to reclaim their son, to pull him back under their complete and total control. And in that, they had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Sumit, we are told, did not fight for Jenny to stay. By the time the story broke, he was a broken man, paralyzed by guilt and fear. He had been so thoroughly trapped by his parents' threats, so deeply enmeshed in years of his own lies that he had no fight left in him. He reportedly locked himself in his room for days, refusing to eat, refusing to speak to his parents. But there was no escape. He was a prisoner in his own home, his life no longer his own. His parents had their leverage, their weapon, his son, Rohan. They had used the boy to sever his connection to Jenny, and now they would use the boy to dictate the rest of his life. To understand the sheer evil of their plan, we have to look deeper into the information our sources have uncovered about the ex-wife and the nature of the blackmail. For years, fans have wondered why Sumit's divorce was so difficult and costly. The narrative was that his ex-wife was making demands, that her family was playing hardball. But the truth, according to our insider reports, is far more sinister. The divorce settlement, brokered entirely by Anil, was conditional. He agreed to provide a generous financial package to his ex-daughter-in-law and her family, setting her and the child up for life, under one non-negotiable condition: that the existence of the child would remain a secret from Jenny and the world. The ex-wife and her family, wanting to escape the drama of the Singhs and secure their future, agreed. They were, in effect, paid for their silence. This arrangement worked for years. But as Sumit and Jenny's relationship deepened, as they overcame every obstacle and finally married, Anil and Sahna began to panic. Their plan for Sumit to eventually tire of the American woman and return to his duties had failed. So they moved to phase 2, active sabotage. This is where the financial blackmail began in earnest. Our sources allege that Anil, a man with considerable business acumen, began to systematically drain Sumit and Jenny's finances. The money Sumit was stealing from their joint account wasn't just for child support. Anil was creating fictitious debts, claiming the ex-wife's family was demanding more money for the boy's education, for medical expenses, for investments that didn't exist. He would present Sumit with documents, with threats of legal action from the ex-wife's family if he didn't comply. Sumit, terrified of the original secret being exposed, paid up every single time. He was bleeding his own future dry to feed a blackmail machine operated by his own father. The mysterious trips were not just to see his son, they were meetings where his father would turn the screws, reminding him of his obligations, showing him new bills that needed to be paid, and reinforcing the threat that they could and would blow his life apart at any moment. He was living in a constant state of terror, and his parents were the architects of his prison. The leak to the blogger, therefore, was not a random act of revenge by a bitter ex-wife. Our sources strongly suggest it was the calculated move by Anil and Sahna themselves. They likely used the cousin as an intermediary, a deniable asset to deliver the kill shot. Why would they do this? Because the financial blackmail was no longer enough. Jenny was still there. Their son was still devoted to her. They needed to destroy the relationship at its core, to humiliate Jenny so profoundly that she would have no choice but to leave the country. The public nature of the scandal was the point. It was designed to be unforgivable, to leave no path for reconciliation. It was the endgame, a scorched earth policy to get what they wanted, and their own son's happiness was acceptable collateral damage. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Jenny was landing in a country she no longer fully recognized as home. Her life, her identity for the past decade, had been in India, with Sumit. We are told her return was a somber, painful affair. She was met by her daughters, who were reportedly furious at Sumit but also deeply pained by their mother's heartbreak. The "I told you so's" were left unsaid, replaced by a quiet, protective circle around a woman who had been emotionally shattered. Imagine the psychological toll. Jenny was not just dealing with a cheating husband, she was grappling with the fact that she was the victim of a long-term multi-person conspiracy. She had been played not just by Sumit, but by his entire family. The people who she had in recent times been sharing a home with, eating meals with, were the very same people who were secretly plotting her ruin. The paranoia, the sense of utter betrayal, is something that our sources say she is struggling with intensely. She is reportedly in therapy, trying to piece together a life that has been built on a foundation of lies. Her friends and family are worried, describing her as a ghost of her former self, deeply depressed and reclusive, refusing to speak to anyone from her old life. The public humiliation has taken a severe toll. She has deleted her social media accounts, unable to face the constant barrage of opinions, pity, and cruel mockery. She has been effectively silenced, erased, by the very scandal that bears her name. Legal proceedings are the next logical step. Insiders confirm that Jenny has been in contact with international divorce lawyers, but the situation is impossibly messy. Most of her savings were spent on her life in India, on legal fees for Sumit's first divorce, and on their shared life together. Much of that money, it is now clear, was funneled directly into his parents' blackmail scheme. Untangling their finances will be a legal nightmare, one that will likely force her to relive every painful detail of the betrayal. And what of Sumit? The prodigal son has been returned to the fold, but at what cost? Our reports from India paint a grim picture. His parents, having won the war, now control his peace. He has been reportedly forced to take a more active public role in his son's life. There are whispers that his parents are already attempting to arrange a reconciliation with his first wife, not out of love, but out of a sense of duty and propriety. They want to present a united front, to erase the scandal of the American woman and present the image of a traditional family restored. Sumit is now a pawn in a new game, the performance of a life he never wanted. Sources say he is deeply depressed, a puppet whose strings are pulled by Anil and Sana. He has the son he was forced to abandon, but he lost the woman he claims he truly loved. He is trapped between two worlds, belonging to neither. So we are left with the wreckage. A woman in America, trying to rebuild a life from the ashes of a decade-long lie. A man in India, living under the thumb of his manipulative parents, forever haunted by his own cowardice. And a young boy, Rohan, who has been used as a pawn in a cruel and selfish game played by his own grandparents. He is the true victim, a child whose identity was a secret, whose existence was a weapon, and who will one day have to understand the trail of destruction that his own family wrought. The question that started this all was, can Jenny ever forgive this? After uncovering the sheer scale of the deception, the premeditated cruelty of his parents, and Sumit's willing participation over so many years, the answer seems obvious. This was not a simple mistake or a single lie. This was a conspiracy, a malicious long-term plot to destroy her spirit and control their son. Forgiveness is no longer on the table. The only questions that remain are about justice and survival. What will justice look like for Jenny, and how will she ever learn to trust another human being again? The story of Jenny and Sumit was once a fairy tale, however flawed, about love conquering all. It has now become a dark, cautionary tale about how easily love can be poisoned, manipulated, and ultimately destroyed by secrets, lies, and the absolute corruption of family duty.